Today I'm going to be talking about hierarchy, which came up in our life force. We're all aware that there are hierarchies, but we may not be aware of how many of them we are in and co-create and participate in, because so many of them are incredibly subtle. In my family of origin, it was very obvious that my mother was the top of the hierarchy, and I think I may have come in second, I'm not sure. My brother, and then my father. Although at times he jockeyed for position. Or maybe my thinking that I was number two was just an illusion that I had. Who knows? You know, the Catholic Church is built on hierarchy. It's obvious. I mean, it's there. It's spelled out. Nobody hides that. I've been reading lately that, more about Israel, that you cannot get married in Israel except through the religious courts, and therefore you cannot get divorced except through Orthodox Jewish law, and many people can't get divorced. I'm thinking, my God, that's a hierarchy, isn't it? Most of the world is based on a hierarchy between men and women. And while we women think we should be on top, shockingly, in much of the world, that is not the case. I would say in the United States, probably children think they should be at the top of the hierarchy. In many lands, they're at the bottom. So these are hierarchies that we recognize. Let's say we look at businesses. There's the president, there's the vice president, then there's general manager, then there's the manager, and then there's the mini manager, and then the file clerk and the janitor. Now, we've grown up with hierarchy. We don't even usually question that it should exist. We just busily try to position ourselves in it. Now, some of us try to position ourselves in it by being incredibly aggressive or super smart or kissing up to the one that we see as being on top, which is probably why I thought I was number two in the hierarchy in my family, which may or may not have been the truth, but I definitely knew how to make my mother happy. So that's often the way that it goes. Find the one with the power, kiss their ass, and be in. So that makes you closer to God. Because what we are doing, of course, is we're making whoever is on top of the hierarchy God, and whoever is closer to God then has some status. And some of us are so disgusted because we're at the bottom, or we don't think we're at our proper, position, we'll try to tear down the people who are on top. But are we really tearing down the hierarchy, or are we just tearing down the one who's on top so that we and or our friends can replace them? Which is usually what happens. Very few of us even have a conception of how to live in a universe without that hierarchy. So naturally we're going to recreate it in our own image. I think that one of the most blatant examples of that is, among Chinese women in earlier centuries, you would read about how oppressed they were, and then they finally became the mother-in-law. And then they could mistreat their daughter-in-law. And wow, wasn't that a blow for democracy, right? So this is an international phenomenon. I'm not saying that every society is like that. It would be stupid for me to say that. I don't know every society. But I have read that some of the more what we call primitive societies may have been somewhat more democratic among the members, except the women were still beneath the men. So I don't know, what does that tell you? It's really tough to live without it. The hierarchy tells us who we are in the world, tells us what we can expect from other people. It's like, well, you're the boss, you're the one who's supposed to come up with the business plan that's going to get me the paycheck. You're the principal of the school, you're supposed to know what to do. You're mom, you're supposed to know or give me or whatever, and it allows us to determine who is going to give us what and who we owe what to. If I'm here in the hierarchy and there are people beneath me, then I get to order them around. On the other hand, I've got to produce for the guy above me. I hate it, but I still do it. Not necessarily in the ways that I've just described, but in the more subtle ways of who is better than whom. Who is, I mean, let's face it, don't we usually have in our heads like who is smarter, who is prettier, who's more competent, who's better at this, who's going to give me this, who I'm responsible for. James and I are about to embark on a new adventure. Starting on Tuesday, 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern time, and you figure out the PMs in between, because I can never remember. We're starting an internet radio program called Inside Out. And it's on voiceamerica.com. We have a link to it, and we're so excited. And I've already felt in myself all that stuff about hierarchy coming up. Oh, I want to be the most popular show, you know. Oh, I want ours to be the nicest banner. You know, that's really, really, really enlightened, isn't it? This morning, and I mean, I have a good rationalization for it, is that in the hierarchy of reality, James and I are getting pretty old. And I have been chronically ill, you know, as many of you know, since for 53 years now. And it's hard for me to function, although I seem to keep croaking along despite everything, just like the people in our cancer ward seem to live through it for some reason. And so all I keep doing is adding more and more work to my already overworked agenda of trying to make a living, doing counseling, doing teaching, leading consciousness boot camp, doing these spiritual services, writing books that I never get any money from but actually have to pay for, doing blogs for free, and now we are collectively having to put out money to do a free internet radio program. And these, you know, most of these ideas, you could say either it's because I'm completely in my ego and just can't stop talking and will pay people to listen to me, or I'm being guided by something higher than myself that says, you know, people need to hear these ideas. Like, you know, we've got a great run going on the Life Connection magazine. We have videos, which this is going to become one of those videos. We have monthly articles and so on. And I feel so excited to be able to reach out to people because, you know, I have this desire to help change consciousness on our planet by supporting people to become more real and to get rid of some of the ideas that are really hurting us. And in my last videos, I've been sort of debunking the whole idea of God and all the spiritual belief systems that we have and asking people, use your common sense. Is this working for you? If so, keep it. If it isn't, why are you hanging on to it? You know, so that's kind of where I've been lately. And so once you topple God from the top of the hierarchy and you see God as we do, as being evolving aspect of reality, in fact, integral to reality and not separate from reality, then, well, if you've taken God off the top of the hierarchy, who's taking God's place? Who or what? And there are people who are atheists who say, well, you see, I always knew that that God thing was bunk, you know. And of course, they put themselves on the top of the hierarchy because they're showing us how much smarter than the rest of us they are. However, what I know from having been an atheist until I had a spiritual awakening at the age of 33 is that I became God. And that made me responsible for everything on the planet. And that was a very nerve-wracking place to be in. And I've seen other people who put money as God. There's always something, or my sex appeal, or my looks, or my husband, or my children. I mean, how many of us have no gods really directing us and telling us what to do and showing us where we are in the pecking order? So, you know, guys, let's get honest. We all live in hierarchy. We all have gods, no matter how enlightened we think that we are. But as we have honestly dumped God as being this above me, perfect, somebody who's going to solve the problems, even if that's me, it's no good unless we let the whole thing go and really come into a new relationship with the universe. And I used to think when this idea of having an internet radio show coming up, by the way, the name of it is Inside Out, should come as no surprise to you because we're trying to bring what's on the inside out so we can all feel our oneness, because we are really all one, aren't we? It becomes so obvious when we start getting real and honest that we are each other, in a concrete way, not in a highfalutin, off-the-charts, metaphysical, in the clouds way. I mean, really, you know, in the real way. And we're tremendously dependent on one another. And the other purpose of this program is to turn all of our ideas upside down, and to do it with a laugh, because we're intending to have a lot of fun. So as we put Inside Out forward, I immediately have to figure out where it exists in the hierarchy of all of my activities. It's taken up a lot of time. And I want to be in some hierarchy of radio shows, but my first thought is, internet radio? Oh, anybody can do that. That's nothing. I mean, I've been on real radio and real TV a lot. And people have talked to me about being on a real, you know, being the host of a real show. This is just internet, because anybody can do it. The other day, as I was coming out of hierarchy, I thought, I love it. I love internet radio. It breaks the hierarchy. I mean, anybody who's crazy enough to devote a huge amount of time and also bring in financial resources to get themselves out there with no recompense whatsoever and maybe no listeners can do it. That's democracy, guys. That means that there aren't, remember with the days where there were 3 networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS? Those of you from our generation actually remember those days. And then all of a sudden there was public radio, remember that? And that was so radical. Public radio, which came in with all kinds of different kinds of programming. And then suddenly there was cable, and that cheapened everything. You know, and then it's like, you know, it's like everything. You know, the New York Times is no longer like the only source. And so what we're seeing, guys, is in fact the breaking down of hierarchy in our world. Whether we have realized it or not, it's already happening. That's part of the new spirituality, what we call the new spirituality, is when we get rid of the perfect God on top of us and we get rid of the hierarchy and we start becoming oneness. And so I thought, internet radio, first of all, it's better. people can listen to it from all over the world. I'm not restricted to Cincinnati. I don't live in Cincinnati, but if I did, or whatever, and try to get syndicated in 4 metropolitan areas. If anybody was crazy enough to listen to me, they could listen from anywhere in the world. Of course, if they knew that I existed and had a computer and there was internet. But people can even get it on their cell phone. VoiceAmerica.com, you drop it into your cell phone. That's around the world. People in many countries who don't have computers have cell phones. And it's radio, so it doesn't need the bandwidth of video. So it's very democratic in that way. And then, on top of that, if they don't listen to you live, there's a podcast. You can listen to it later. You can do it in your own time. You have no excuses, everybody. Are you getting the advertisement here? But do you see what I'm saying? It's better than terrestrial radio in many respects. And now I'm not trying to flip it over and now internet radio is on top of the hierarchy and terrestrial radio sucks. Yeah, you can only listen to it in the car where 90% of the people are. But no, we don't want to acknowledge that has any value because I'm doing this. So this must be better than that. But anyway, when this came to me, I began to realize, just how entrenched I was. And I love that about internet radio. Now, the next thing is, how am I going to get over my competitiveness to see where I am in the hierarchy with the other people on the same network? So then I try to remember, bring to my awareness, Beth, how are there going to be listeners on that network if none of the other shows are any good? What, you're going to start your own network from scratch, which I'm not doing. It's only because there are programs that appeal to people. I'm not going to call them good or bad. They're programs that appeal to people, that there's even an audience at the network, or that the network can afford to pay for the engineer who's going to be doing our program. Oh my God, they better thrive. Everybody better thrive. And then the guests who are going to come into my show, am I going to prove that I'm better than them? Or am I going to want them to thrive so other people are going to want to come onto the show? Oh my God, I have to make my guests look intelligent?
I hope so.
Helen is my second guest. And I can feel myself changing. As I'm going through this process, I can feel myself changing. And this morning, our banner for Inside Out is purple, and it's really pretty. I love the symbol. And this original logo, the original graphic, came from a service that sells. You pay a small amount of money, really, and you get the use of a particular graphic. And I was able to take that graphic and use it for our New Spirituality website, our Stream website, the Beth Green website, and now it's being integrated into Inside Out. And without the people who made that piece of graphic, and without the people who sell them, and without the internet, none of this would be possible. And I think about that little purple banner, and I had this vision this morning of being a purple flower in a field of purple flowers. And I felt myself relax for the first time since I've been thinking about doing this show. Why do we want to eliminate hierarchy? Because it's killing us. It's driving us. It's destroying our relationships. It puts us in the prove it energy all the time. Either I'm proving myself to somebody above me, I'm proving myself to the people beneath me so they'll stay beneath me, I'm proving myself to everyone around me so that they can see that I should be the one above them. And yes, we know it's all survival based. We know that when we were infants, this is straight out of Living with Reality, Ego, Instinct, and Evolution, free on the internet. Get the book, PDF file. Just join our newsletter. Any one of them, any one of our websites, you can sign up for our newsletter. And we figured out how to survive in our families by finding an edge for ourselves. It's when our egos were born, when we were infants, when we had the least amount of consciousness we possibly could. Not that we didn't have lots of feelings, not that we weren't pretty sly, but we didn't have a hell of a lot of consciousness. And that's when we were formed, and that's when our egos were formed. And we're still there, relying on having an edge for our survival. Now I'd like to take a moment for each one of us to think about some hierarchy that we are in that we may not recognize, that we're just letting ourselves see. Whether it's the what will people think of me, which is the embarrassment hierarchy. It's like it makes other people's thoughts about me more important than my body and my recovery from cancer, for example. Right? Is that what people will think of me? Yeah? So that makes them more important than me. And some of you may be afraid that if we do become successful on the radio, which would be like a monumental life change for Beth Green to actually, get a larger audience. It could happen. We're not going to bet against it, but we're not going to hang on, expecting it. But should that happen, is there anyone in the stream who doesn't think that they will somehow be less than in the hierarchy if we have a successful radio show? I mean, honestly, don't you think that you're going to diminish? Because we're going to have this new baby? Ooh, it's the new baby. It's taking up all my attention, sucking the boob, and much cuter. 40 and 50 and 60-year-old babies do get a little trying after a while, right? But as far as I'm concerned, infants get pretty trying too. But yeah, without even realizing it, that feeling has been like a wave. We were talking about that this morning before I came out. There was so much blocking this morning. It's like, well, why is that? So give yourself a moment to really take in what hierarchy might you be in. Your sister. That's somebody's. Helen? Oh, would you like to? If anyone would.
That was mine.
Oh, yours is your sister too. Think about it and see if you can't see yourself as a flower. You don't have to be a purple flower, although in the hierarchy of flowers, purple is clearly better. But notice that I didn't wear purple today, but I wore something close. Whatever flower, you can see yourself and feel the relaxation of being in the field. It's not all on me. I don't have to fight. Hierarchies always assume judgments. I'm judging this as better than that. I am judging myself. and hierarchies restrict our freedom because we're being driven by an unconscious agenda that really blocks us from being truly ourselves. Now, do I mean by that we cannot recognize that there is wisdom that is greater than our own? Or that there are people who are stronger or more gifted in music or anything else like that? Can we recognize that without creating a hierarchy? Can we say that, and this is my hope, that if someone comes to listen to me at a spiritual service, or is contributing and participating in the spiritual service, or that they turn on the videos or they read my articles, I don't want them to be reading or listening because Beth Green is the founder of this really important organization, the Stream Center for the New Spirituality. I mean, if that were the case, we would be waiting for a long time because we are not high in the hierarchy. Or even because they think somehow that I'm closer to God because I've been a spiritual teacher for 33 years. But because if you do listen or you do come and you do participate, it's because you gain something from it that supports you in your life. Or that it brings you a way of looking at things that you don't even have to take in completely, but you can say, oh, that really triggered me to think about this. And, I went off in my own direction with it. But boy, that made me stop and think. I would love that. And then you wouldn't have to tear me down either, because I'm not putting myself above you. Having been, quote, the leader of so many things for so many years, I'm very familiar with a process that goes along with hierarchy, which is hate the guy on top. Even if it's admire and trash. I'm watching it with Tiger Woods. Are any of you aware of Tiger Woods? He's a golf player. And James has introduced me to golf. And this guy was just a wonder. And he really still is. But if you read the articles about him, it's always about, is he going to break this record? Oh, he blew it. He didn't break that record. Or people, or he's God, or he's shit, or that's the way it is. I mean, it's so rare that you see anything about him that's just, well, and this is how he did today, and this is what's going on for him, and this is how, it's just, I look at that and I think, no wonder I have so many headaches, being as psychic as I am, as I can pick up energy that's coming towards me of people who hate me because I'm on top, even though, I mean, hate is a strong word, but there's an energy in there, trying to tear you down. And even though it's a very small heap, we're a little heap, but hey, if you're in that heap, whoever is at the top of that heap, your families, most of us do not have extended Catholic families. So we do have only 2 or 3 kids, as opposed to the 11 or 12 or 13 that, that makes it a bigger heap. But anyway, whichever size heap you have, it's still, life or death in the heap. And we, you see the girls in 5th grade, who are creating hierarchy with each other. 3 girls battling it out for who is on top. Yeah. And then, of course, the women who come in with a doctor and the diamond ring, or the rock star, or the spiritual guru, or the hunk, or whatever it is that gives us status. Boy, the answer is self-love and oneness. If I can love that little purple flower in the field, or whatever your flower was, Or maybe yours wasn't a flower, maybe it was a Ken doll. Whatever it was, in a field of Ken dolls, whatever it was. You know, if you can love your own unique manifestation of the oneness, if you can really be in appreciation of what you are, then you can relax and support everyone to thrive. The Pope told us to shake it up. I love that. The Pope. The Pope is doing it. He's trying. He's trying to break out of the elitist way of being a Pope. He's trying to bring a new level of consciousness to the church, where people start talking about things that really matter rather than the things that divide us. Oh God, you know, if we could only talk less about the things we can argue about, because I've seen it over and over. People argue because that's what helps them feel higher up in the pecking order, not because it matters. And he's saying, let's talk about what matters. Doing good and helping people. I love that. It's the new spirituality. It is transforming our planet. We are calling it, we're calling ourselves the Stream Center for the New Spirituality. But as we've said, we didn't create it. It's happening. The internet, the automobile, the cell phone, the Pope, and many other things. It's a movement in history that is happening with or without our individual cooperation. But we can participate, we can co-create, we can enjoy it. For those who grew up in our generation, we're both in our late 60s, you know, creeping rapidly on 70. Some of you have already passed that mark, one in this room. We grew up in a world much more dedicated to hierarchy than the world we have today. But it's still rife. And even those of us who are trying to break the hierarchy, as I said, are very subtly engaged in it. So I ask you to be totally honest with yourself and love yourself enough to let it go, to let go of your place in the hierarchy, to let go of the hierarchy, and replace it with self-love and appreciation of one another. And please tune into Inside Out, not because I'm God and I told you to, but because you think you might have a good time and that you want to be a part of a community of people that's becoming real and turning everything inside out and upside down. Thank you.